Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Neal. I'm the city manager here in Edina, and I'm happy to be with you live today. I haven't done this in a while, so it feels good to be here. I learned how to tie a tie again. Got a fresh mask, never been worn before. Feels good. Before we begin, I want to introduce some of the elected officials who are in our audience tonight, in addition to Mayor Jim Hovland, who's going to be speaking in a few minutes. We have City Council Member Carolyn Jackson. Carolyn, over here. And we have council members Ron Anderson and Kevin Staunton joining us on Zoom. Also joining us are school board members Erica Allenberg, Julie Green, Owen Michelson, and Janie Shaw on Zoom. And Heather. Oh, Owen's here. That's even better. Thank you. And Representative Heather Edelson and Hennepin County Commissioner Chris Latondras are on Zoom, I believe, as well. Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for being with us here today. We appreciate you making time for this event. This is going to sound weird, but I'll start with a confession about myself. I like State of the City events, State of the Community events. I'm an aficionado of State of the Community events. In fact, I've hosted a couple dozen of them during my career, but I've seen 100, maybe closer to 200 of them just because I like to see them. It's a good place to get ideas. It's a good place to get an understanding of how other cities and communities do it. How serious are they? How fun are they? What's the ratio of hard data to beautiful imagery? What are popular themes? That sort of thing. So as we ran up to our event for today, my observations of the State of Community events that I've seen so far this year is they are much more serious and much less fun than they have been previously. And the themes of 2020 are pretty simple, and they're common across the country. COVID-19 and the killing of George Floyd and our nation's response to his death have really been the dominant themes of the State of the City, State of the Community that I've seen. And these two forces are still dominating our lives as Americans and Minnesotans, and even up till today. Our State of the Community event is going to tell you Edina's story of 2020. We cannot tell our story without talking about COVID-19 and George Floyd, but we're also going to talk about the educational, the economic, and the social and community resilience that we've observed in Edina in 2020. Yes, 2020 was a tough year for many people, but Edina didn't stop growing and changing, and that's what we're going to focus on in this year's State of the Community Address. To start telling Edina's 2020 story, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, my friend, Edina Public School Superintendent John Schultz. John is in his fourth year at the Edina Public Schools. He spent the majority of his more than 30 years in career and education in nearby the Hopkins schools. First as a ninth grade science teacher, and then as a principal intern and as a K-12 district science coordinator, the district director of teaching and learning, and then the superintendent there for 11 years. As Edina superintendent, Schultz brings a strong background in academic achievement, fiscal stewardship, facilities management, and equity leadership. For the past 4 years, he has focused on bringing collaborative leadership to the strategic plan and will work with the community to continue to grow academic excellence, equity and inclusion, social and emotional learning, leadership, and community engagement in the district. Superintendent John Schultz is with us via Zoom today. He's prepared his remarks using video and will participate remotely in the Q&A session that hopefully will follow today's speeches. So let's please roll the video.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the state of Edina Public Schools for this 2021 Edina State of the Community event. No doubt, most of you remember March 16th of last year. I remember it. It was the day that we all realized the pandemic had arrived in Minnesota and things would be different. Within hours of the governor's announcements to close schools for in-person learning, district leaders and support staff gathered and started planning. We had 2 weeks to reinvent how to do school, and I think we've been planning ever since that day. Over the summer, we began to reimagine our learning plans, work with teachers and our leadership to look at creative solutions to ensuring kids stay safe, but at the same time, learning. We considered many, many scenarios. We studied logistics. We also held everything up against the mitigation standards and strategies that would keep students and staff safe. In August, we received direction from the state. The state said to adjust our plans according to the Minnesota Department of Health case counts, and we launched hybrid learning and a new virtual academy in the fall. So we currently have students in hybrid learning and in that are still remain distance learning by choice of their family. Since then, we've learned to pivot and react to the changing COVID virus conditions in the community. We have had instances of positive cases among students and staff, as well as close contact situations that have caused a few or many to have quarantine. We've had to quarantine full or partial classrooms. We've had to quarantine athletic teams or pods of athletes. We've also quarantined programs at times to keep students and staff safe and make sure that we don't get viral spread within the schools. In November, our COVID case rates and number of quarantines began to increase, and it became very difficult to properly staff our buildings and our hybrid models. So as a district, we shifted to distance learning, as did other metropolitan school districts. In mid-January, the numbers began to decrease, and now we're in the midst of beginning to pivot again. We have been phasing students back into school. We've begun the hybrid program at our secondaries, and the governor called back all elementary students to in-person learning. We are now finalizing plans to bring secondary students back for in-person learning, and those plans are being developed as we speak. We continue to focus on our key mitigation strategies that by now I'm sure all of you are familiar with. Social distancing in particular is challenging in the school setting because our classrooms may not be large enough to accommodate 6-foot distance. So that's why we have the hybrid model that allows a 6-foot distance, because only half the students are there in the hybrid model with a Monday, Tuesday set of students coming in. You can say student set A, and Thursday, Friday, student set B comes in. In addition, we also are asking people to wash their hands, mask, stay home if they're symptomatic. We also have optimized our ventilation systems in the building. We have provided personal protective equipment, and we also have started COVID staffing for our staff. So the supplies of PPE have been a combination of state supply donations by community groups and purchases by the district. We've used $2.1 million in CARES Act to help purchase some of these materials, as well as funding additional student support services, technology needs, Tier 1 childcare, mental health support, and additional paraeducators. Last month, the state began providing materials for us to offer COVID testing for staff. And this is a screening program designed to help detect asymptomatic cases of the virus. Tier 1 childcare program has served about 250 children in the district. Also with a great deal of help from our partners at the Edina's Meal Fund, Edina Education Fund, Edina Give and Go, and Chartwell's, the district's food and nutrition services contractor. More than 84,000 individual meals have been delivered to families throughout the district. The mental and emotional wellness has been a concern and a priority throughout the school year. Next month, we will use a new tool called Panorama Student Survey to ensure that we are identifying and addressing the social and emotional needs of all students. The survey is a screening tool that will give school staff a better understanding of students' well-being so that classroom supports can be adjusted to meet the needs. Support staff will follow up with students who are identified as at risk and in need of additional support, and will work in collaboration with families to address those needs. The district has a very strong foundation for technology, and it allowed us to really be able to shift our kids and teachers to an online format. I will tell you that I do not believe, and none of us believe in Edina, that machines or computers can teach kids. It still is important to have a talented, qualified Edina teacher that uses technology tools to teach their students. We are fortunate to have a strong staff around technology that played a critical role in shifting to this pandemic. Our district's amazing staff, the technology staff, literally supported thousands of people, including students, teachers, and parents, as everyone adjusted the distance learning model. And I can't stress enough that technology was key in ensuring that we deliver instruction and curriculum to students. So as we think about the role technology played for students and for our teachers, this spring we will be asking the community to support the district's technology infrastructure with a vote on a 10-year technology levy on May 11th. The current technology levy of $6.5 million has been in place for the past 10 years. It will expire at the end of December 2021. The new $7 million levy that we are requesting represents a $500,000 increase over the old $6.5 million levy. And this levy would remain in place through 2031. Technology provides important classroom tools that enhance learning, offers engaging ways to interact with learning, and gives students platforms where they can authentically and creatively express themselves. More and more, technology also provides access to the curricular resources needed for most subjects. Paper textbooks are going away and digital textbooks have become common, which adds a cost for software and licensing. Students are also demanding schools provide them with digital resources for them to do their work, research, and problem solving. There's also increasing need for adaptive technology, which is key to educational access for special education students. The district is committed to use the technological tools in the classroom when they are the right tools to use. And teachers are very well trained and use technology tools when it's good for students and ensuring that it will lead to student achievement. The tech levy also supports key staff positions, which includes our media specialists in every school. Technology is also crucial in the operation of all district systems and facilities. Our phone system, our network, our information system, our safety and security, and even our ventilation system is all on the network, keeping our buildings safe, accessible, and clean. The current levy has most of its money spent in tech support to the tune of about $3.5 million. You can see $1 million of it is in in hardware. $803,000 is in software, and $782,000 is in curriculum. I would say the curricular resources in the green have increased over time, as well as the information support system, and hardware stays fairly stable, but does show increases depending on the market and any new technology that's coming forward. Our future needs. Technology is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. It is with our kids. Our kids use it. Our kids use it outside of school. So we use technology as a tool when it is best used to enhance learning. It supports our investment by maintaining and replacing technology as needed. It also encompasses staff, software, hardware, network, and we're seeing more and more curriculum materials and adaptive technology come into our classrooms. When you look at this technology levy and compare it to other districts, you can see that Edina is in the middle. We don't have the largest levy, of course, and we don't have the smallest levy. So you can see where we would end up in pretty much the same position relative to the other school districts with this $7 million ask of the community. The monthly tax impact. Tax impact of the tech levy is based on property values. So on the x-axis, you will see $300,000, $400,000 home, $500,000 home, $600,000 home. The annual tax impact on the $400,000 home would be about $15. So if you look, the current levy is $223 per year. For a $400,000 home, this levy will increase $15 per year. For a $600,000 home, currently the levy is $349. This levy, if passed, will increase the property tax of that home by $24 to $373. We also are going to ask a small bond issue. Bond is for improvements to facilities, and we're asking this to keep up with current demands on the system. So one example of that is the addition to the bus garage to accommodate additional special education vehicles. Currently, we contract special education transportation through another contractor. By adding on to the garage, we will be able to transport our special education students ourselves, the Edina Public Schools transportation system. We need addition to the garage to house those additional buses. We also are going to use this bond for parking area at Countryside Elementary, Valley View Middle School, and the bus loop and parking at Creek Valley Elementary. The estimated tax impact for the bond, the estimated tax on a $300,000 home, you can see is $5, and that goes up to the estimated tax on a $600,000 home of $10. I'm sorry, I said this estimated tax on a $300,000 home is $5. Estimated tax on a $600,000 home is $10. So with that, I would want to remind all of you to vote. This vote will occur on May 11th, and it's an important ballot. Pay attention to your voting places throughout the district, and more information will be coming as we move through the spring. So thank you for this time. Thank you for all the support you've given Edina Public Schools in the last year. Also, thank you for all the patience and the difficult decision making we have had to make during this pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Schultz. It's now my pleasure to introduce Mayor Jim Hovland, who will speak about the city's response to the pandemic. Jim joined the Edina City Council in 1997. He served in that role until he was elected mayor in 2005. Today, he is Edina's longest-serving mayor. He serves as co-chair of the Regional Council of Mayors, chair of the Municipal Legislative Commission, chair of the Transportation Advisory Board to the Metropolitan Council, and vice chair of the United States Conference of Mayors Standing Committee on Transportation and Communications. He is also a member of the leadership team of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the Southwest LRT Corridor Management Committee, and the Greater MSP Partner Advisory Council. Mayor Hovland has served on the Edina Community Foundation Board of Directors for more than 2 decades and is an active member of the Rotary Club of Edina Morningside. Please help me welcome a mayor who probably needs no more introduction, the Honorable Jim Hovland.
Thank you. Thank you. John, are you still with us? So, John's been with us now 4 years. 4, I'd say, difficult years, transition years, choppy waters on a lot of things. And John, we know that you're retiring in June, early June, and we are giving you, John, you can use it up until you retire, then we're going to change the locks. But here's the key to the city that we want you to have. I think everybody can see that this is a beautiful, beautiful key to the city. And you can have this on your wall, but until you get done with your service to the city as superintendent, Scott will figure out how to give you access to different places. So Let's give John a round of applause for serving Edina so well over the last 4 years. I'm going to put that in a safe place, John, and we'll get it to you. It's unbelievable to be with people. It's just, even spaced out, it just feels so good to be around people. And I looked over and saw Michael Stanzik, and all I could think about was the Super Bowl. And thanks for hiring Will Ferrell to do those commercials just ripping on Norway. My old great-grandparents' home country, and I thought they were quite clever, and it was a beautiful-looking vehicle. So I'm sure a lot of people in this room are going to be waiting for that electric Cadillac to show up. So. You too can have one. The guys at your table, I think, are good prospects. And then the banker, he's had a good year right there too, Joe, with all the PPP loans they've processed. So, usually we have so much to talk about here, and we do today too. In fact, we've got more to talk about than normal. I think last year when we did this, I got done, I went, shoo, and that was just a normal year. And so we got this kind of tip off in January that when that coronavirus hit Wuhan, that this was not going to be something that was going to be limited to one particular country. And here in March, then I think John talked about it, how it showed up here. And here we are almost a year later, since we were making significant decisions in the city of Edina and across the state and across the country about how we were going to try to manage this deadly virus that we couldn't see. And here in Edina, if you drove down Valley View about a year ago, end of March, you would have seen a sign in Hope Melton's picture window. And it's still there today. It's a big paper heart that was created in a classroom in Edina by her little neighbor girl, Amelia, 5 years old. And Amelia, you can tell, was a typical Edina person, even though she's only 5, because her message to Hope Melton, who she probably thought was a senior citizen, and we think of everybody in our age bracket as being kind of middle-aged, whether we are or not, it said, stay strong. Stay strong, and that's been kind of our motto all the way through this particular year. Stay strong together. We're going to get through this together. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we did to try to make sure that we facilitated getting through this together for small businesses and people that were living in our community that were hit hardest because of the type of employment that they had. So keeping Amelia in mind and her charge to be as resilient and steadfast as we can be, let's talk about some of the things that have historic significance for all of us in this room. All of you dealt with this in your own businesses, and we've dealt with it as a community. So since last March, the city has worked to adapt its services and programming to reflect the changing public health situation due to COVID-19. We've also worked to protect our residents and support our businesses. We created a small business emergency assistance program last spring to provide short-term direct financial assistance to small businesses in Edina that have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We had 2 rounds of grants that we gave out. They were provided to small businesses, maximum of $10,000 per grant. We had 1 round of awards in May, and then we had an additional $400,000 that was awarded in October. We'll talk about that more momentarily. And that money, that $400,000, came through the Federal CARES Act. The city got money through the state that trickled down to us, and I think we may get some more as well, but we'll see what happens in Congress. So the goals of the program, the intent was to be able to help businesses sustain themselves and try to sustain our local economy. And we also were concerned about vacancy rates and retaining and creating employment opportunities, and then encouraging business investment and ensuring residents had access to desired goods and services. So we've got a list of grant recipients, I think, that are up on the screen. The Edina Chamber of Commerce was vital in this process, and 50th and France Business Association as well. They were each awarded grants, but they worked tirelessly to help make sure that we came up with these folks, these companies that needed assistance and made the best selections possible. And you can see there's quite a list of businesses there that receive these grants. And then we also tried to figure out what to do about restaurant support. And because federal and state guidance worked to keep people from gathering and spreading disease, restaurants and event venues were among the hardest hit. During the first shutdown, the city created an online map showing the locations of restaurants open for takeout. And with the help of the Chamber and Adams Publishing Group, we placed a full-page ad in the Sun Current to promote that takeout at those various restaurants that were doing that kind of work. We also looked for other opportunities to try to promote local businesses, to try to get folks down to 50th and France, for example, or out into the other shopping areas in our southern commercial district. Edina was one of 5 business districts in Hennepin County to receive public space enhancements, is what they called public space enhancements, as part of the Love Local, what was called the Love Local initiative. The effort was used with county allocated CARES Act funding to encourage people to shop at their local business districts while following COVID-19 safety guidelines. The program was intended to create a safer environment for those getting out to shop or dine at their local, in their local business districts. And you've probably seen some of these domes down in the 50th and France area. They're outside the Nolan Mains projects, and these art houses throughout the 50th and France area were erected as part of that project. We haven't been able to use them for outdoor dining or within the bubble itself for dining, but I think we'll get there. And in the meantime, they have really become, I think, public art. And then as we worked through that early March, late March period, and then on into April, there was a tremendous controversy about masks. We're all sitting here now wearing masks thinking this is the smart thing to do. Wear a mask, keep your hands clean, keep a safe distance from each other, be careful how long you stay indoors. We just think this is routine until we all get vaccinated and get past this. But in March and April and early May, the idea of a mask was anathema to many people. And when the city of Edina was the third city to decide in the state that we were going to impose a mask ordinance, I'd say the support from our community was 10-1 in favor of that masking ordinance. But I will tell you that the 1 out of those 10 that didn't like that idea, the types of messages that we got were really, really nasty and really personal. And I don't know if they were Edina residents or where they came from, but I didn't bother to answer any of them because they were really disgusting. All because we were trying to keep people safe. So we also, made an effort with businesses to provide the things you'll see on the screen, all of the signage, the window clings, the posters, the flyers, and the social media graphics for businesses to use. We wanted to take the pressure off our businesses because businesses wanted to be safe too. They wanted to keep their employees safe. But they were reluctant to tell people that were coming in to shop that they had to put a mask on because they were afraid they'd lose potential business. So we took that responsibility onto ourselves and it took it off of their backs and their shoulders so that they didn't have to tell customers, you got to put on a mask. Now they could say, look at the signage, the city says you got to wear a mask. I think it helped most of the time. But of course, there's always some instances where you hear where there was confrontation and some difficulty. But for the most part, I think people were very, very compliant. And then in the liquor license area, our restaurants and liquor license holders got hit so hard. For this year, because we were already into that particular year from a licensing standpoint, we now for this year cut those license costs in half to figure out some way that we could help them as well kind of weather through this thing. And I think many of them now have gone on to a second, maybe a third round of PPP, and I think Joe Ahrens could tell us more about some of those opportunities that are coming the way of restaurants. But I think at the federal level and the state level and the local level, everybody's trying to help those businesses that were hardest hit. So we're pretty proud of that, how we got on that issue early and tried to be public health conscious. And we think this is well worth the investment in our license holders. We're going to talk a little bit about new construction valuation. Since last March, we've continued to service the public without interruption. One measure of economic growth, of course, in any community is the level of building and construction activity during the particular calendar year. An important metric is to track the building permit valuation for the building and other regulated construction permits issued by the city in any one year. And this is an important metric because that metric translates into tax base growth in subsequent years following the construction of those projects. The year 2020, and this is really quite astounding, the year 2020 set an all-time record for Edina in the valuation of new buildings and constructions in the city in that particular year. For 2020, the valuation of new construction in the city of Edina, and get this, was more than $358 million. $358 million in new construction. We're going to talk about some of those projects that came through in a few minutes. We staggered employee work shifts to help provide adequate social distancing, and city staff working remotely primarily, very few working out of City Hall, completed 15,719 building inspections in 2020. And that was up 42% over 2019, which is a pretty astounding statistic as well. And then, of course, even though we were in the middle of the pandemic, we still had some new businesses come into Edina, and we felt really good about that. And we've got those names up on the screen. Down at 50th and France, we got 2 new restaurants and 3 new retailers that opened in 2020. Pajarito, the Lynn Hall. I was just there yesterday morning with one of the morning Rotary guys for a cup of coffee. It's a beautiful space. Pajarito, of course, is a Mexican restaurant right on 50th and France, where Mozza Mia Pizza used to be. And then there's a couple of new boutiques. There's Flirt Boutique, Six for Good, and Stranger and Company. And at the Saltdale Center and Galleria, there's also several new tenants, including the Rustica Bakery, which is outside the food court at Saltdale, and then PXG, Parsons Extreme Golf, which has their own entrance right to the, I'd say to the southwest of the entrance to the food court. Also Cycle Gear and Tonic Barber, and then several other open businesses opened up in the greater Saltdale area as well. In some of our business parks. We welcomed El Camino Taco Deli, Habitation Furnishings, and the Goddard School of Edina, among others. We also had 1 new apartment building completed during the pandemic, and that's the Lorient, and many of you have seen this right down at Sunnyside in France. And this is a beautiful building that fits, I think, wonderfully into the neighborhood. And it is, I think, 45 apartments. And then he's got some room for some retail on the first floor, but of course in this particular situation, the retail isn't filled yet. But this is our first district parking there, so if you go down there when things get a little bit, you feel a little bit more comfortable and you want to go down there for a meal, we've got district parking in that building, first district parking in that neighborhood that'll involve public parking, and there's several spots available there, so keep that in mind. And then we're going to show you a photo of 3650 Hazelton Road. This is, you can see it rising on the horizon over there, right across from Think Bank, near Lunds and Byerly's. This is a high-end apartment called the Bower, done by folks from our community. It's on the site of the former Guitar Center. And when finished, the building will be about like the Weston, about 18 stories tall. It'll have 185 dwelling units, and part of the parking is going to be on top of a podium. So you come in at grade level and go up for parking, part of it below, and then the apartments will be above that. But it'll be roughly, I think it's maybe 10 feet shorter than the Weston, but in that same general height range. And then we've got another project going at 70th and Cahill. Maybe some of you have been by there. There's that old dry cleaner site, Waldorf Nevins, that went bankrupt, and in there is a new building called Amundson Flats, and that's workforce housing, and that is partially constructed now, and I think that'll be a wonderful addition to that neighborhood and get that cleaned up. And that's 62 units of affordable workforce housing in there with underground parking, and then they'll have easy access to the regional trail system. And then right over here on Hankerson Avenue, if you're over by Wells Fargo Bank or across the road from Jerry's, there's an old apartment building over there that I don't know if it's still up or if it's down, but it looked like it belonged in Florida, and it was like an 8-plex, and that has been sold, and there's going to be some townhouses that'll be going in there that Danae is going to put in place. Beautiful project over there on the 5100 block of Hankerson Avenue. It'll be 2 four-unit townhome buildings. And then down on 76th, right off France Avenue, we've got another building coming up on the old Flight Time Studios, Minneapolis Media Institute site. That is the Flight Time Studios, you remember, was Jimmy Jam and their place of operation for several years. And that's been torn down now. We've preserved some of the items that were in there. We can showcase those when the building is complete. This will also be a 4-story apartment building called The Sound, in tribute to the Flight Time Studios, having been there, on 76, as I mentioned, and that'll be finished in 2022, and that will have 70 apartment units in it, all affordable. So we're pleased about that as well. And then we approved 2 other projects. If you go down to Valley View and Wooddale, just down the street here, you'll see that one of the apartment buildings is being totally refurbished, which is a really good thing. And then where that old New Horizons facility was, before they moved across the street, we approved an apartment building there, and that's going to be quite an attractive building. Have we got that up on the screen? So that's at 4425 Valley View Road. And that'll be a 3-story, 21-unit market rate apartment building. And that'll be a wonderful place for people to live, and that'll kind of finish off that particular neighborhood, I think. That neighborhood has completely transformed itself over the past few years. I'm thinking about when Josh was on the council, that was one of the areas of projected change. Valley View, Wooddale, 44th and France, 70th and Cahill, all of those areas now have been touched and addressed in some form or fashion and improved. And let's see, at 70th and France, you know, this was the most recent one. Ted Carlson and Orion Group, along with Mortensen, came with this particular project on the U.S. Bank site, which was approved both at the Planning Commission and on a preliminary basis at the City Council. The bank will be torn down when the new bank is built. The new bank will be built in the kind of the southwest corner of that site, and then there'll be a new office building up where the bank is presently located. And then there'll be a 23-story tower market rate apartments built there, as you can see. And that'll be, I think, the pivotal transformation project for France Avenue. That'll be the standard for what happens on France Avenue in the future. Not necessarily in terms of height, because I think height will be continued to be scattered throughout the district, just like it has been for 30, 40 years. But I think in terms of the quality of the project and what you see there and the level of density and how the streets function, how it follows these design principles that were put in place, because we'll be able to create streets within that particular acreage that'll have beautiful walkways, and it'll be quite a terrific project. So we're pleased about that as well. One of the things we worried about when we got into the pandemic was, if we're not going to go to City Hall, if no one's going to be working there anymore, and we're going to still have public hearings, how are we going to handle that if people can't come and testify on something that's of concern to them? So that was top of mind, and I have to credit Jennifer and her staff and Scott Neal, everybody that worked so hard through the pandemic. And these folks, I'm telling you, as we got into the heart of the pandemic, trying to figure out how we were going to help people and businesses survive, I think our communications department must have been working 14, 16-hour days to make sure that things were working properly. And that was true to the whole staffing level, Scott Neal included. And so they really deserve a great deal of credit for us kind of weathering through this, along with just the sort of typical preparation that we do in the city of Edina on something like this. But we devised this method for having our board and commission meetings, as well as having our city council meetings online. We now have public hearings online. We hold the decision-making until 2 weeks after the public hearing testimony is taken online, so that people can submit more public testimony. Then we make a decision 2 weeks after the original public hearing was held in that virtual world. So we think we've devised a system, and then people can also provide testimony in different ways through bettertogetheredina.org and some other methodologies as well. So we're pleased with how that's come out. And now I want to talk a little bit about what we call the COVID-19 dashboard and the COVID-19 memorials that you can see at City Hall. So, you know, since day one, we've worked hard to be able to say that we're providing the kind of guidance necessary for our residents and our city to comply with federal and state guidelines with how you deal with COVID. with all of this on, from a public health standpoint in terms of trying to figure out how to make sure our citizens stay as safe as possible. We created this, and we're one of the few cities in the state that created our own COVID dashboard, and this is an example of it that you see up on the screen, where people could see what was happening there in our community with respect to the number of cases, the number of hospitalizations, the age brackets involved, and the particular folks involved. And we all know that early on it was folks over 65 that were most subject to the challenges of COVID. But as time went on, it became younger people that were contracting COVID, and they may have been asymptomatic, but they were great carriers of COVID to other folks. And so our data reflects that as well, and that also formed our communication strategies around what we wanted to get done. And of course, we had some folks pass away. And we have put, I think through folks at City Hall, there are over 70 paper hearts on the glass at City Hall. So you can see those paper hearts, each representing an important life lost, life lived and lost in Edina, in our community. When you drive by City Hall and Eden Avenue in particular. And while we know, as the old Persian proverb says, that death is a camel that lies at every door, there has certainly been a profoundly untimely and unfair way of having death arrive at people's door during the pandemic. We know death has not diminished these people. We know many of them. We cherish their memories. And for all of us who knew some of them that passed away, they'll be abiding within us until we ourselves are gone. So let's pause for a moment of silence in respect for all of those people, those 70 plus people in Edina that passed away so far due to COVID-19. Thank you, folks. You know, we've had some other untimely deaths as well. Folks that are in our Rotary clubs, spouses of people in Rotary clubs. Tom Wininger, most recently, terrible loss to our town. Someone like John Hankinson, lifelong resident of Edina, not a Rotary member, and then also someone like Dwayne Schley, Sandy Schley's husband, who passed away from COVID. Those are just a few examples of the people that we've lost, those lives lost. So we also knew that we had to think about trying to figure out how to help families that were affected by the pandemic because of the type of employment that they had. So between CARES Act funds and funds that we were able to apply from some surpluses that we had, we allocated $500,000 and we assigned that money to VEEP, volunteers enlisted to assist people, for emergency rental assistance. And to date, over $300,000 of that $500,000 has been used judiciously by VEEP to help people in our community be able to help make their rent payments. During COVID-19, VEEP has allowed us, been allowing people up to 3 months in rental assistance. With rent on average for a 2.5 bedroom unit priced at $1,350 a month. More than 300 households have been assisted with the first $200,000 from the city. We've also waived late fees on utility bills for payment to the city for those facing a financial hardship as a result of the pandemic. And that situation is still in place. And then as we all tried to stay safe, we had folks that were coming up with creative ideas, particularly one when we ran short of PPE, whether it was masks or hand sanitizer. We had no places where hand sanitizer could be found. We had engineers at the city decide that they were going to create and bottle hand sanitizer. So our engineers allowed us, through their creative instincts and abilities, allowed us to distribute about 5,000 bottles to some of our residents living in multifamily housing of hand sanitizer. And you may have read about this. They did a story about it in The Sun, and it was a ethanol-based sanitizer, and it was the result of one of our engineers, Charlie Girk, and a couple of his friends talking about doing it, getting that hand sanitizer put together. they created about 165 gallons of ethanol-based sanitizer from the product that they purchased raw. And as I mentioned, that created about 5,000 bottles, 4-ounce bottles for dissemination to seniors in multifamily housing. What else we were concerned about was folks feeling isolated, not being able to get out and function from an activity standpoint. Maybe they had disabilities, maybe they're just older and couldn't move around quite as well. We started a pen pal program, and our staff got creative with these different programs, the pen pal program being one of them. That was done with the Edina Senior Center and the Edina Community Foundation. In the Edina Library, they all came together to collaborate on this intergenerational plan where they connected older adults with younger people. And we had 340 participants, or 170 pairs of people communicating with each other, who each wrote at least 3 letters to each other. And we still have some of those people writing to each other almost on a daily basis, so that was a really good thing. And then we did something called RECtivity Boxes. Some of you may know about subscription boxes like Parkbox, Ipsy, and Stitch Fix that have taken off in popularity. We created one called a RECtivity Box, which was to provide a convenient, easy way for people to be doing recreational activities at home. It also provided the Park and Rec Department a way to stay connected with the community during a time when many of our programs and events were not feasible. We debuted that in April of 2020, and they've developed nearly 30 box themes over that time, and they've sold nearly 400 boxes. And we're really grateful that the Park and Rec Department came up with that idea. And as I mentioned earlier, the city's been closed since last March. Our city staff has been equipped and trained to work from home, providing the same level of service our residents have come to expect. We've implemented use of no-wait inside software for scheduling some personal interviews or meetings that we have to do at City Hall, such as fingerprinting, things that cannot be done online. And with this particular software, the no-wait inside software, we've been able to accomplish some of those things that need to be done where people have to get together for particular purposes. And then, like other businesses, we've had to erect plexiglass and other safety features to keep our employees and other customers safe at our city facilities that have been open during the pandemic. And like many of you, our business operations have suffered economically. Almost a year ago now, on March 13th, Braemar Golf Dome, Braemar Field, Braemar Arena, Edinburgh Park, and the Edina Arts Center closed to the public in response to the governor's first shutdown order. And about 160 employees were furloughed from the city. And at some point in 2020. And so a lot of these facilities, as I mentioned, were shut down. Some of them have reopened. The Golf Dome is as busy as can be now. And they figured out ways to keep people really safe over there and distance. As you know, the city is one of the top employers of kids, and we had to forego that in 2020. So we haven't been able to employ any kids. We're hoping to get back to that shortly. In this particular year, if we get everybody vaccinated, we can get some more kids hired and get them back working again. We've been grateful that our park system has allowed us respite from the pandemic. I think everybody has seen people outside really trying to enjoy themselves as much as possible. The walking trails at Bredesen Park and Centennial Lakes are used heavily and are really valued by people. We're constantly getting compliments on that. The remodeled golf course we had over 45,000 rounds there in 2020, which was up 6,000 rounds over the year before. And then other ways that people were dealing with the pandemic was going to the liquor store. And when the liquor store shut down, of course, then we had to develop this delivery system. We were fortunate that we developed a delivery system a year before. So we did go down in revenue, but you can't believe the volume of traffic or business under the home delivery method. $2.2 million in home deliveries in 2020. We were averaging 74 orders a day in 2020. We made more than $51,000 worth of deliveries on our busiest day. And that was, as you can see from those graphs, quite a busy day. And business continues to be brisk at the liquor store. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've had some revenue losses. Some of these places that couldn't be open, with our CARES Act money, we've been able to cover our operating expenses, but you couldn't use it for revenue loss. And I'm thinking that with this next round of potential funding from the federal government, we may get to the point where we can cover some of these revenue losses. But we're figuring out ways to deal with it, and I have to give Scott Neal and the financial team a lot of credit, because what we did right off the bat was we decided to cut the budget by about $1.4 million halfway through the year. And we've been able to weather through that easily, I'd say, strongly. And then we also created a budget stabilization fund. We took money from other years that we had surpluses and aggregated about $4 to $5 million there in a budget stabilization fund in case we needed it. All of that led to us getting our double AAA bond rating renewed by Moody's and Standard & Poor's, which I think was pretty remarkable during a pandemic when cities were so adversely impacted, ours included, in terms of losing revenue. So that was, congratulations to you and your team on that. And then on to COVID-19 testing and vaccination. We'll cover that briefly. Edina's public health services, as many of you know, are provided by Bloomington Public Health, which provides similar services to the city of Richfield as well as their own residents. We've got a wonderful relationship with these two cities, and we've been working with them now on finding a spot for some mass vaccinations when we get to that point and there's enough product available. And Scott, I don't know if you want to, we looked at Southdale and you're still trying to figure out where that might be, that mass vaccination spot for our three communities. So we're working on that. And then I think folks are continuing to get vaccinated depending upon their age group. Because of the pandemic, I think we've also, I'll back up and I'll tell you this way. So in March, we faced the pandemic and all the problems associated with that. And then the masking policy. And then the look that we had at our financial situation and the having to close facilities and the loss of revenue there, and thinking about all the stresses we had in the city. And then on May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was killed. And that created a whole new set of difficulties. And I will tell you that since the civil unrest and all the challenges we faced as a city that was the next door neighbor to the city of Minneapolis, the curfew helped a great deal, because we were able to tell then, we were able to stop cars easily and see who was out after the curfew. And some of them, of course, were our own residents or young kids that hadn't forgotten about it or were heading home after seeing friends. But in the middle of the night, we picked up a lot of bad guys and ran them out of town. And of course, we had decided that we were going to make sure that we made it as difficult as possible to get to places like Galleria. When you look around the country, when you looked at places like Beverly Hills or New York, Rodeo Drive, Fifth Avenue, the shops in Scottsdale, a lot of them were looted, not at the Galleria. We developed a strategy with them that helped keep them safe, along with Target across the street. We had some people that came in on that Wednesday night that tried to scope out Target, and we were able to run them off. But you remember just the night before that, up in St. Louis Park, they got wind of a group of people that were going to burn down St. Louis Park High School, and they were able to chase them off. So there were, in the suburbs, there were a lot of things going on, including in Richfield. But we have a lot of retail here and a lot of high-end retail, and this is something that we worry about. So I will tell you that with the Chamber's help and with the city, since the civil unrest, we have been meeting regularly with our business people to try to develop strategies around what might happen in the post-George Floyd trial environment. How businesses can help themselves and how we can help them. And I don't know what other cities are doing, but I feel pretty good about some of the strategies that we put in place around that. And then I can also tell you that we formed what's called the West Metro Command, which is every city in the West Metro that we're neighbors with. Bloomington, Richfield, Edina, St. Louis Park, Golden Valley, Minnetonka, Hopkins have contributed people to this West Metro Command that have been training for any difficulty that might arise on a post-trial situation relative to George Floyd. And the difficulty that we're facing now is that we're being asked to help Minneapolis. All of us are being asked to help Minneapolis. And so you're wrestling with this issue of how do we make sure that we keep our own people and property safe, but how do you go and help a neighbor if they really need help, and not put yourself in a position where you jeopardize your own people and property. So that's one of the things that we're working on right now with this West Metro Command, and I think that's not tactical information, that's not strategic information. It may be a little bit strategic, but I think it's information that people should know about, that we're thinking about this and contemplating it, because I think people will wonder, well, what's the city of Edina doing? And that may be one of the questions that would have come up in the question and answer period. And we're planning for it, and we've been planning for the worst and hoping for the best. We're going to wrap up now, and I think I just want to tell you that during this difficult time, it's important, I think more than ever, to support one another. We've launched a program called the Mayor's 2021 Acts of Kindness, 2021 Acts of Kindness. And we've done this with the Rotary Club. And so I want you guys to be thinking about how to report on these acts of kindness. Think about something or someone in Edina that has done something for you or something you can do for somebody else. Shoveling a neighbor's sidewalk, cleaning off a coworker's windshield, paying it forward like you heard they were doing up in Brainerd several months ago. Think about some of those things. We'd like to meet our goal as a city of being recognized for the acts of kindness and being as kind as I know we all can be to each other. So that 2021 Acts of Kindness would be a wonderful thing to do. So I'll tell you in closing that to Amelia's charge of stay strong, we have stayed strong. And we've stayed strong together, because together is how we'll get through this and get it behind us. As a city government and as a community, we have been resilient and steadfast in the face of a dangerous unseen disease, having structures in place that allowed us to deal with a deadly challenge that descended quickly upon us. Came from good planning and visioning, which has been a hallmark of the Edina community. And even as we work to put COVID behind us, we are mindful to be continuing the Edina tradition of thinking today about tomorrow. While the future is never clear, it always begins by actions taken today. Shakespeare probably said it the best, with more eloquence than I'm doing right now, that it's not in the stars to hold our future. It's ourselves. It's not in the stars to hold our future, but in ourselves. So that's what we're doing. We're thinking about the future, even in the face of a pandemic. That is our ongoing pledge. That is what we do as a community. We stay strong together. We'll get through this together. Thank you for your time today.